think most artists struggle with their mental health, period. It almost feels like it's just part of the job to have some sort of quirky issue under the hood. But over the past 6 years of my entire art career, I can say with confidence that this year is the year that I've produced the least amount of art. However, at the same time, I saw more improvement within the last year alone than any other year even combined. In this video, I'll share a little bit about my experience understanding my own depression over the past few years, and then we'll go right into a deep dive of the specific areas that mental illness affects the brain and how that tremendously affects you as an artist. And I'm not kidding, it's serious. It's a big deal. Lastly, I'll run through a list of a few practical things that I did as a result of my learning and healing. Now, it's usually common at this point to give a disclaimer that this is not medical advice. Please see a physician or a doctor. If you have any immediate concerns, please call a suicide hotline at ... blah 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 blah. Now, I don't say that to ridicule all of those things. They all apply here and they're very important. But I believe we're moving into a time where there will be a shift from wanting to see some sort of paper to confirm that you've got what it takes to evidence, to trial and error, through trial by fire, through refinement that proves that you have what it takes, that you know what you're talking about. I mean, when you look back in history, the most prominent healers were the ones who first healed themselves fully from whatever ailment that they had, and then shared their remedy with others. But yeah, getting back to a little bit of my story, it honestly seems like a prerequisite to have some sort of issue or struggle with life to become an artist. We all are the misfits. We don't usually fit in. We're a little bit rough around the edges, right? For a lot of us, it's been our way of escaping reality or even expressing ourselves, since we likely struggle with doing that in our day-to-day lives. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, a lot of us sometimes are kind of shy. We don't talk as often as the other kids in school, or maybe even in adulthood, we're more reserved. But when it comes to what we create, oh boy, it says a lot. It speaks loudly. It's that very thing that brings it all back full circle for me, that makes it comforting, and I take the viewpoint that maybe all of this is just as it should be. There should be people who maybe have a little bit harder time expressing themselves like everyone else does, to add to the beauty of life. I had no idea what I would be getting myself into 6 years ago when I renamed my Instagram account to Ergo Josh and started posting my artwork for everyone to see. At first, it was a huge whirlwind of excitement. I was tracking all the stats, all the numbers, all the followers, all the metrics, trying to get everything to increase and level up, and rejoicing whenever I would make another breakthrough. I would optimize for SEO and different posting strategies. Every morning, I would get so excited to check my inbox to see if there were any new comments or sponsorship offers. But I quickly hit a wall when I reached my first YouTube video or my first new piece of art that I would share, and the results tanked. It's one thing to have small beginnings. I know a lot of you out there are struggling just to get 10 likes on a post after a week, but I believe that's necessary because it's a whole nother world of pain when you've grown a lot, when you've amassed a following, when you've amassed a reputation, and then you have a miss then. And then you have another one after that. And then you miss again. That hurts like something different. That, combined with the economic downturn after the COVID pandemic and other personal life issues, forced me to face the reality of my lifelong crippling depression. And that sounds intense, crippling, right? But I've got to say it like it is. I'm not going to water down my message. It was exactly that, crippling. Looking back, I could barely walk through life. Sometimes literally, because of autoimmune diseases. What happened was that it slowly sucked the life out of every aspect of me. I was dimly lit in every single area of my life. I had no idea that everything I was doing was only at a small, tiny fraction of the potential that I had within me at any given time. The amount of self-sabotage that I did in various areas of my life is honestly astounding. This includes my artwork and my career overall. Now I'm going to list a few embarrassing things that I did and honestly still do sometimes, in hopes that it connects to someone else out there and you feel less alone. I would procrastinate on tasks because I'd be afraid of the pain of failure, the rejection, whatever. I would avoid reading messages that I would receive from friends, family, anyone, not to look busy, but to avoid the potential emotional pain that might happen because of subconscious, covert contracts that I had made without even knowing consciously. I would avoid asking for help with several different things until they would get so bad that I did create an even worse problem to even compare to the one that I began with. I would constantly change up and back up my files and layers to avoid feeling bad when I would see that I actually made something worse, and then I'd have to go back to it later. And honestly, I had to stop streaming because I would just constantly be hyper aware of how I was doing, how my drawing was going, how much I was struggling, and I would interpret every single bit of data, every comment or lack thereof, as feedback on how I was doing, what I was saying, my work, everything. It wasn't good for me. The core issue is the lack of unconditional love for myself. That paired with the belief that I had to have something externally. I needed something to fulfill me, to make me worthy, to make me appealing, to make me lovable, was really the root of all of my pain. Now, with my sob story all out of the way, I want to go really in depth with a lot of the things I've learned about the brain and how important it is with relation to anything that you do, especially art, because if you love to draw, for example, or paint like I do, it requires a lot of brain power, a lot. To start off, I want to make clear something that I hope the whole world eventually knows before I die, that mental illness is really just a wound inside the brain. We really need to stop looking at it as some frivolous thing that wealthy people have that they use to complain about random things that don't matter. We really need to stop that. We're not going to get very much further as a human race if the only things we care about are the things that we can see with our eyes. If you research anywhere, you'll learn that all of the cells in our body regenerate. The skin cells that you had when you were a baby, for example, are gone. They are no longer in your body. There are new ones that came from those very same skin cells, but they're not exactly the same, and they change relatively quickly. However, there are some cells that take much longer to regenerate. The brain cells, many of them take 7 to 10 years to completely regenerate. That means that if you have a certain habit, a certain way of thinking, that it takes quite a long time to change them, because your brain, well, as it makes sense, you can't really have your brain changing all the time. You need something consistent to ground you every day, right? So it makes sense, but it can also be heavily detrimental. If you also take into consideration that our gut produces 95, something like that, % of the serotonin that we need. Serotonin is involved in apparently like everything that goes on within our body. So our gut and how our gut is doing heavily affects how we think and how we feel. So with those two things out of the way, I want to talk about the two modes that I feel like not just our brain, but many things in life have. There's two phases. There's two directions you can move in. There's two mindsets that one can have. You can be in a growth environment, a growth mindset, a growth mode, a growth phase, or a conservation one. Growth is abundant and expansive, and it makes a lot of connections. Conservation is scarcity, and it's limited. When in conservation, the higher functions are dulled or completely shut off because they're not necessary. The focus is to conserve. Drawing like I said, is a heavily brain-dependent activity. You can break down your ability to draw just to experience, muscle memory, the ability to make several branching connections to different topics in creative, unique ways, and confidence. Leave a comment if you can think of anything else. So, let's go into what is, I believe, the first heavy component of depression, just negative thinking. You can really lump all of the mental illnesses into just feeling bad, right? For me, ego and judgment stand out as some of the biggest members of the mental illness team, if you will. Ego is a word that has a lot of negative connotation, and I've touched on it before in my video titled Check Your Ego, if you want to check that out. Check. I want to make it clear, though, that ego is a neutral thing. It's a very important part of who we are. It's essentially our persona. It gives us a sense of identity, and it keeps us safe. However, if the ego has been damaged or threatened extensively, it will reorient itself to avoid further damage or threats. And this is when one can switch into conservation mode, the same one that I mentioned before. In conservation mode, the brain will do whatever it takes to avoid what it deems as bad. That means that it will choose to use one painful experience or feeling or memory in order to avoid another one with usually seemingly increased intensity, but many times I've found it's the same or less. So, the brain works hard, but a lot of times it's not very smart. And to prove this, I found, and has been documented many times, that this tends to create a negative feedback loop. This concept can also be explored in what is called confirmation bias. A vortex of negativity can start to spiral, and it brings you deeper and deeper into an eternal abyss of self-loathing and apathy. It can get to be quite a scary place. Eventually, the entire world may seem eerily quiet, and very dark thoughts can begin to creep into your mind. Thoughts to give up art entirely. Thoughts to run away from everyone and everything. Some even worse thoughts that I'd rather not mention here. However, none of this is your fault. I want to make that clear as well. I think for many people, because I see myself and others, somewhere along the line you likely have suffered what you felt to be a dire consequence for a certain failure or mistake. And also, you probably weren't given an opportunity to improve. You might have even been ridiculed or shamed on top of that, compounding on the pain that you felt. Not to mention, if this was done publicly, then, well, that's what most people call a traumatic event. You might have even been physically abused for not measuring up to something without even knowing why. When this happens enough times, or if it's significant enough without a safe space to recover, our brain, our ego, our persona can split and create an alternate version of itself that will go on full alert and observe the rest of your life from that moment forward through your own eyes. When it anticipates that you may be in that difficult situation again, you might be getting into an opportunity that could potentially make you in this situation that would cause pain similar to that one thing that happened 5 years ago. It flares up into a giant inferno, and it will throw whatever it can to keep you from putting yourself in that situation. Unfortunately, without a diligent and consistent conscious awareness placed on the mind, that split persona will not only stay in your brain long after that trauma is over, but it will grow in power and influence as it constantly gathers evidence to use to convince you to fall back and go to a safe place later. It is always active. It is ever vigilant. Some call it hypervigilant. That is the part of your ego that most people refer to. It can get quite nasty, actually, to the point where you bring down others in order to soothe your own pains. I know for a fact that we all know someone or many people who have done that, and we all have likely done it ourselves. I know I have. And that brings me to the next component, perfectly in line, which is compassion. Compassion is huge, but the most important aspect of compassion that is often overlooked is compassion for the self. Like I mentioned before, the ego will sometimes create programs to run all the time and then activate to protect you from harm. This, unfortunately, can include beating yourself up in order to avoid or reduce the pain of the punishment that you anticipate from some form of external source. Don't we all know the most common self-sabotaging thing when it comes to relationships, for example? I'll ruin the relationship, I'll break up with you, I'll do whatever I can before you do it to me so that it doesn't hurt as bad. Isn't it crazy how that seems to be so logical, but it really always hurts just the same? I tend to beat myself up a lot, and if you've watched my live streams at all, you've probably caught me in the act. It's really quite a toxic behavior because you can accidentally train yourself to think that drawing or painting results in this severe pain because you're just judging yourself so hard and beating yourself up when you don't measure up to some sort of ideal that you have in your head. Many times you're not even conscious of that ideal. Self-compassion, completely unconditional self-compassion, is what's needed in order to encourage yourself to go in the opposite direction, to do what you want to do. You need compassion. It's the opposite of what the world teaches us. As a human race, we run, we move forward. We've made it to the very stars. We've been on the moon because we have loved ourselves and we were excited to explore. Nothing comes from pain and forcing, at least nothing really amazing or good. It comes from joy, it comes from love, it comes from compassion, it comes from growth, exploration, discovery. So here's an interesting analogy. Think of it as if you have another version of yourself inside of you that's about the size of a small child. Because they're that size, they're also just a lot less articulate with their words. As a matter of fact, they can't really talk using the words that you use at all. They can only communicate in feelings and vibes. So let's say every time you go sit down to draw, you end up frustrated and beating yourself up. Man, I studied. I've watched that video. I've watched so many tutorials and I still can't get this right. Geez, what is my art teacher going to think? Oh my God, I spent all this money on this career. What are my parents going to say when I can't measure up and get a job? What the hell am I doing? What's wrong with me? I just have to work harder. That's some of the things I tend to say to myself. But let's say you do that a few times. What's going to happen is that smaller version of yourself is going to start to put two and two together and say, every time he goes over to that desk, every time he goes over to pick up that pencil, he ends up feeling bad. I end up feeling bad. So you know what? Every time I sense that this guy's going to draw, I'm going to do my best to keep him from doing it. Because we always feel bad. We always feel terrible after that. So why do it in the first place? And that manifests as you procrastinating. That manifests as you just being confused, not knowing what to draw, just staring at the blank paper, all sorts of things. You won't believe the resources that little version of you inside has access to influence you, since it can't talk. It will use any means necessary. Some of these include negative thoughts, reminding you of past failures, and just maybe sometimes a pure feeling of intense anxiety in your stomach. So how can you remedy this? What can we do? Well, all you need to do is to do the opposite, to train that version of yourself the same way you would train something else that can't talk. So maybe a dog or a cat or some other creature. Positive reinforcement. You know, the whole Pavlov's dog thing. Hey, I drew for 15 minutes today. I'm gonna go get a piece of candy. Hey, I drew for 3 days this week. I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back. No, literally, do it. Hug yourself. kiss your hand. Kiss the hand that you drew with. Write down 3 sentences congratulating yourself for drawing 3 days this week. Now, it might sound really silly. You might be laughing. I'm not going to be caught dead doing that. But that part of you inside that feels so anxious and frustrated to draw really appreciates that. It does not care where that validation comes from, believe it or not. That feeling of love and appreciation, it's going to want more of that. Ooh, that feels good. Okay. He keeps doing this every time he draws. He rewards us, me, him, they, them. You know what? I'm going to try and encourage him. Whenever he wants to draw, I'm going to encourage him because I like this. You see what I'm getting at here? That part of you is going to want more of that. Your brain is going to want more of that. Now, the last facet of how improving your mental health can improve your artwork is the most important one. And it had the biggest impact on me and my own artwork in my experience these past couple years. So for everything I've said about the ego being this scary, malicious defense mechanism that just goes crazy whenever it's threatened, there is also an alternative force within you that is quite interesting. It's simply just an internal guidance system that wants to help you grow. It's just intuition, a gut feeling. This guidance system is completely different from your ego in quite a few ways. So, for one, you can only tap into it when you're feeling good, and it scales with how good you're feeling. During my own journey, I've learned that emotions tend to be the very means by which one can change the random thoughts that pop into your head. It sounds really silly. It sounds like you're being tricked, like you're being manipulated. But if it's coming from you in a genuine place, trust me, it works. Now, not only can you willfully switch your brain from conservation to growth by changing how you feel, but it will give you ideas, that which we call intuition, that if you follow them without judgment, without letting the ego from before, because the ego is going to catch on to that. And he's going to be like, because that's going to bring us to that one thing. And I don't want to feel that again, right? That's how you navigate this dance. So when you start to work on how you feel, you can unlock intuition. You can start to catch it when it comes and notice and track back the events that brought you to that moment. The cool thing about intuition is that it has unlimited access to your brain as well, just like the aggressive, defensive ego does. So when you start to really lean into your intuition, you'll start to recall all sorts of anatomy, shading, lighting, colors of various things you've seen throughout your entire life right as you need it when you're painting. This is what we often refer to as having a visual library. Everyone has one, but not everyone can access it to the same degree. It's bigger than just studying really well. It's bigger than using the right mnemonics. It's bigger than IQ. It's bigger than your experiences. It really demands multiple different handshakes with different systems within the body to fully work, to fully access. So imagine a nuclear bomb of like a eureka moment of just complete awareness and discovery of, this is the perfect thing. I know exactly what to do. But in order to achieve that, it requires 7 different people to turn a key at the same time, scattered across the earth from the North Pole to the South Pole. And for every person that doesn't turn the key or misses the timing a little bit, the intensity of that nuclear bomb decreases exponentially. This is something that can take a significant amount of energy to do, though, because it's expensive. Using all of your resources, being creative, connecting tons of different things that normally shouldn't be connected, but you found a way to connect them in an interesting way. It takes power. And your brain, one of the things it does really well, of the many things that it does well, is being efficient. So intuition tends to work in a way where once you give it a little bit, you're like, okay, I got this cool idea. I don't really know how to fully visualize it, fully see it, but I'm gonna sketch and jot some notes down. then it will give you more. Then it will give you a little bit more. Then you'll find you'll get a little bit more, get a little bit more ideas, get a little bit more clarity on where you want to go with this thing, right? Because that's how it works, is to be conservative. If you look at humanity at a larger scale, we kind of operate in a similar way. It's way too difficult to try to avoid every single problem that could happen, every single catastrophe, every single accident. So unfortunately, how humanity has developed is when something happens, that's when we make the change. 9/11, the whole world's changed, especially the United States, right? First few buildings kill a number of people in the family. When they burn down, fire regulations, fireproofing, fire standards. I remember in architecture, there's ratings for how many hours within a fire any certain type of building material can last. We've made a lot of progress with that, but it came off of the backs, off of the ashes of the people who have passed before. And as grueling as this process is, it's really quite efficient because there's essentially an infinite number of ways that things can go wrong. So instead of trying to protect yourself from all of them, it's just better to focus on growing and growing in a direction, a specific one, and taking care of things that happen and fall by the wayside as they happen. So because both parts of your brain, both phases, both modes require so much energy, your brain will shut off all access to intuition if it perceives a more important threat is present or maybe just around the corner. So now I want to just share a few practical tips for anyone listening to this. It may be very overwhelming to hear, but there are a lot of little things I've picked up that have helped me improve my work that have come off of all of this study and healing. And the first one is slowing down to evaluate all the potential issues with your work. So something that I notice, and you'll see in the drawing that you're watching me complete, is I will try to correct something, and then I'll still notice there's still something off, and I'll try to correct it, and then there's still something wrong. Then I'll realize the real problem was a little bit bigger, and I was fixing little things that didn't need to be fixed and adding more problems. Whereas what I should have done is slow down and really look at everything. What is really going on here? What is the real problem? And a lot of times when I'm trying to fix an eyebrow or fix the nose, the real issue is that the entire lower jaw is in the wrong spot, or the entire cranium is too shallow and I have to make a bigger shift. So that has been a huge help, and it's come from being more mindful and being more compassionate towards myself as I work. Another thing that you've likely heard me mention before is not forcing yourself to draw or create when you're feeling bad. Now, I know this is challenging when you are working in the industry, but the earlier you start to practice this, the easier it gets. When you try to draw when you're feeling bad, it does not work. You will find, at least like I do, that you can go back decades worth of skill level depending on how bad you feel. It's crazy. I also suggest that you create, draw, paint, whatever, without any purpose or intention with sharing it with others. Sometimes you just want to do it for fun. You just want to explore something. Doing that often, regularly, is really, really good for you. I also found that letting myself draw without any plans or structuring of layers, just drawing as if it's traditional, all on one layer, all on one page, has been really helpful because it frees me up to explore different things, and I can always just erase if I want to change something, right? So that has been a great practice for me because while I'm doing it, I'm able to observe how I feel and what thoughts come into my mind. I also have used less references, so I was kind of forced to explore this because my Pinterest got removed forcibly without warning. Still a little salty about that. But I use a lot less references now because of it, and it's been challenging, but it's also been really cool to see just how much I slow down the moment I start to look for references and add them in. Sometimes it's better for me to just not look at any references and draw for about an hour, 90 minutes, and then when I look for reference, it's much more efficient. I also have noticed that focusing on what I care about more has improved my work drastically. Instead of trying to get it right, instead of trying to do it properly, doing what I care about, what I really want to do, what makes me excited, has better results. Something that I am still struggling with a little bit, and you'll see at the end of this recording, is abandoning rules when they make me feel bad. So a lot of times you'll learn certain rules with art, right? And they're usually to help you and help you improve and understand the concept or the material that you're working with or the medium. But there are times where you're working on your own and you have those rules come to mind, or you may have your own self-imposed ones. So for me, many times it's, the people who are going to watch this is going to be confusing to them. I've found that I've had to just let that go. Sometimes I don't even follow my own rules because I know that this is where I'm going to figure it out. So in this illustration, I knew earlier, quite a bit earlier than when you actually see me start shading, is that I can't figure out what I'm trying to figure out with lines right now. I know I need to start shading and using form to figure it out, but I didn't want to because I wanted to go in a proper order, right? That is not really helpful and can really extend the amount of time that you're spending to get something right, and then add to your frustration. Then you start beating yourself up, and well, you know how that goes. And the last thing is not drawing in front of others. It really kind of sucks, but not streaming has really helped me quiet my own mind while I work on my own artwork. And I think it was just an irresponsibility of not balancing that time when I was streaming. So if you're ever looking at becoming an art streamer or just sharing your work online live, make sure that you don't stop doing it on your own time. Please. Trust me, it's not a good idea. So yeah, mental health is important. The drawing that you've been watching me complete, unfortunately, you probably won't be seeing this if you're on a podcast platform, but it's been a bit of a testament and a throwback to everything I've said. You've seen me struggle, but you've also seen me win. You've seen me succeed. I started this drawing late at night a few nights ago, and when I got to the face, I knew I had to stop. It had been frustrating the whole time. I'd been killing it the past 2 weeks with my drawings, so I knew I had to stop. I've been through this before. I've been through the same scenario where I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? I've been practicing. Does this mean I don't have what it takes? Am I a fake? Am I just incapable of doing this? I was like, nah, it's time to stop. You know what it is. So, and it didn't even look good. The face compared to what it looks like now it looks as if like somebody else drew it. There were so many times where I would just continue to push myself and try too hard and beat myself up for not getting it right despite all that practice, and I'd wake up the next day not wanting to draw. And when this happens day after day after day, well, that's honestly, I think, where half of the art block that people suffer from comes from. Fortunately, I was able to snap out of it, get a good night's sleep, and then revisit it the next day. I let myself draw sloppily, and it just came up with different ideas for a different, interesting concept. I really wasn't intending to put so much effort into this drawing. It was supposed to just be another figure practice, but now I have a new and exciting illustration to look forward to working on after I finish editing this video that you're watching tonight. I honestly see it as a gift, as a reward for choosing to seek my own intuition rather than listening to the dated advice to give up and avoid pain or punish myself until things got right. You see me inventing forms, poses, trying things out, changing things. It's so far from the original, well, pretty far from the original reference now. And when I don't achieve what I want, I don't punish myself. The art process is really messy. It's non-linear, just as you see me working here. And so is the journey to pristine mental health. So thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day or night, wherever you are. Keep doing what you love, but do it while loving yourself too. You don't have to protect yourself from pain anymore because you've got your back. Great job.